Great.
Well, welcome everyone. Like I said before, I'm excited to have Lynn here. Lynn and I have known each other for a long time. We worked together on some marketing campaigns when I was at Lincoln Lutheran, and before that we knew each other because we have kids in the Lutheran school system.
Yeah.
So Lynn Wineman is the president and chief strategist of KidGlov, a boutique marketing firm here in Lincoln, and recently B Corporation.
Yeah,
we're
we're
certified B
Nebraska's
Corporation.
5th certified B Corp. The only one, someone pointed out to me, we're the only one with a female founder. So all of you female founders, there's a wide open space to go after that B Corp certification.
And I'm just going to let Lynn really tell her story about her journey. Took some different paths and where she came to today, and the great service that she provides all of her customers, and just a great person. So I'll let you take that.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks. It is great to be here. I spoke at a Perk Up, I think maybe 10 years ago. So I don't see any of the same faces here, all different, which is a testament to the fact that you're incubating groups and sending them out into the world. And also early in my business, I came here for some consulting that really helped me out. So I think it's a great space that you've got here. So I thought you guys tell me. I wrote down 6 things that I'd like to talk about, very unscripted. But I thought I'd talk about how it started, when it almost ended, rebranding, expanding, finding our purpose, and then how I'm transforming now as a leader as the business grows. Sound okay? Yeah. All right. Yeah, all right. I'm looking for that affirmation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love audience participation too. So, feel free to shout out any questions or comments or things you want me to dig deeper into. You too, Brooke. But I always wanted to run a business, and I always knew that business was going to be an advertising agency. I probably was one of the only people who went through college, start to finish, same program. I just knew exactly what I wanted to do and was very focused about it. I was lucky enough to get an internship in college at a large agency. They kept me on when I graduated. I moved up the ranks and really was being groomed to be the president of that agency. And so for a long time, I threw myself into that, and I thought, this is great, it's what I've always wanted. I might be the only person in the world that starts and finishes their career in the same place as well, right? And then I woke up one day, even though I was traveling up the ladder, I woke up one day and I took a moment to breathe, because in the 90s and early 2000s, when I was coming up through an advertising agency, and Quentin's worked this life for a while too, it was not unusual for me to work 50, 60 plus hours a week. There were weeks when I would start in San Diego and end in Boston. I had 3 little kids, and I woke up one day and was like, I hate my life. Like, this is what I always thought I wanted, and I am very unhappy. And then a lot of guilt came along with that, because my family had really sacrificed a lot for me to have this dream. And so I got recruited away to go work for a small agency. And while I worked at the large agency, I had written up several business plans, right? Because I knew I wanted to go on my own, and I thought I could leave and start my own thing. I couldn't, because I only had worked in a large agency. I couldn't visualize doing it on a smaller playing field, right? So every time I wrote up my business plan, it required me needing $200,000 to start, and I did not have you to help me, and I did not have $200,000 in the bank. And you can't just go walk up to the bank and go, please give me $200,000, right? So most of us can't. I couldn't. So I was recruited away by a small agency to be their president. I thought it was a dream come true. I went in, and the first week it became pretty clear that that was not going to work. That when you're the president of a small firm and you don't see eye to eye with the owner, it is a very lonely and powerless place to be. So While that was a very difficult and very short-lived journey, I learned a ton about how to operate a small business and how not to operate a small business. And I was kind of like, if these guys can do it, surely I can do it. So one day I had to leave because there was a situation that had happened. I could not be the president of a firm that had this happen. I had to leave. I went home. I told my husband, I'm like, I have to leave my job. And he was like, you've always wanted to do this. Do it. That was the universe's kick in the pants for me. You guys have already been through that. Whatever brought you to running your own business, I had to be kicked in the ass. I hope I can say that. You're gonna believe me?
Well, Luke will edit you.
Okay, sorry, Luke. I won't say it again.
No, it's okay.
Okay, all right. I had to have that to go out on my own. So I went out on my own very quickly, very small, me at my dining room table. At the time, it was not super cool to work remotely. I don't know that the focus suites existed. If they did exist, I didn't know about them at the time. And, I just launched out on my own. Luckily, I had a good reputation in town. I had a couple clients follow me right away. And I met the CEO of Tabitha, Christy Henrik. She was the interim CEO at the time. And she was looking for both a marketing director and an advertising agency. And so we went to lunch. We hit it off instantly. If you know her, she's very vivacious and personable. We hit it off instantly, and she said, I would love you to be my marketing director. It would have been super easy for me to go, stability, salary, let's go do this. But I knew that if I did that, I would be at some point sad, right? So we made this deal. I'm like, I will be your interim marketing director if you also let me be your agency. So for a year, I basically had 2 jobs. I slept very little, but it was a great opportunity for me to catapult forward and get started. I did that for a year. They really wanted me to stay. I made the hard decision to say, no, I have to go out on my own. And going out on my own was really, that first year I really kind of felt like I was in a job while I was developing some other clients. It was a nice transition, but then I was on my own. And those of you that have payroll, several of you do, you know that the scariest thing that you do, right, is you think the scariest thing is going out on your own. I think the most scary thing is when you start hiring people. And I not only am responsible for my own life, but I'm responsible for others. So we very cautiously started to bring people in. We added some accounts, which was very exciting. Early on as a founder, you all know this, you're just like running on adrenaline, doing everything yourself, right? And then I'd start to bring in some more people. We did really pretty well. I mean, I had to make money out of the gate. I wasn't one of these startups that had a big bank account that I could just sit on. My family counted on me as the breadwinner. I had to make money out of the gate, and I was very lucky that I was able to do that. I think I got up to about 5 people by the 3rd year, and I think it's that dreaded 3rd year, right? And I had a big client, and I knew this wasn't a great model, but I had a big client that made up about half of our business. And overnight, that big client pulled back to next to nothing, right? And then you're sitting there going, whoa, I've been so busy working on that big client and so excited about adding to my team, I forgot to sell, right? And so all of a sudden overnight, the money's cut back, and that's the point where it almost ended, right? So we'd had some good success. We were winning awards. We were about to rebrand. And I remember calling my creative director into my office one day, just going, I don't know what we're gonna do. Like, we are out of money. I don't know what we're gonna do. I don't see any great prospective sales on the horizon. I cried. And I think for me, the 2 things I learned is if you're gonna weather the hard things, you need somebody that's gonna support you emotionally. You need to think about where you are going to go for emergency cash, because in hindsight, we right now have almost a $1.5 million annual payroll. It was the need for $10,000 that almost shut me down in year 3, right? And so I humbled myself as an adult to go to my parents and say, Mom and Dad, could I have $10,000 as a 40-year-old? And, they were more than happy to support me. But I really agonized over that for a very long time before I made that ask. So I think knowing where you're going to go when the hard times come for money, even if it's just a little bit of money, I think it would have been really sad to have let $10,000 derail a dream. I know that I would have been a really sad person if that had happened. So that's how we made it through the almost ending. Kelly Peterson is my creative director, has been with me for 10, almost 11 years now. And the one thing we always said through this journey is, we can never both freak out at the same time, right? Even if we both want to freak out, one person always has to be the encourager. And I think, one thing I remember from the early days is I had a lot of really well-meaning people in my life who said, gosh, this sounds like a really hard journey. Wouldn't you just like your job at that big agency back? I know they'd give it back to you, right? Or, gosh, this sounds really stressful. Why are you doing this? And when I think back, they were really well-meaning, and you all maybe have those people in your lives too. And I got to the point where I was strong enough to just say, thank you for loving me. I got to do this. I have to do this. So that's kind of how that chapter went. Once we knew we were stable, or at least stable for the time, we had a few people on staff. Because I had started so quickly, we started with the very boring name, Wineman Communications Group. I even say it low because it's so boring. And what we do is give people interesting brands and interesting stories. And I remember driving down the street one day and looking at the name of a bank and going, that is the worst name ever. It's just boring, and they're just using their initials for their logo. That's such a cop-out. And my son was like, isn't that what you're doing? From the mouths of babes, yes. Right? Yes, and my son, he's a protagonist for sure. So it was like, yeah, this isn't all about me anymore, and we need to practice what we preach. And I think that's an interesting principle, right? For example, if you were in bankruptcy, it would be hard for you to do what you do, right? We need to practice what we preach. And so we went through our own branding process, which is a great thing to do. We went through our own branding process, and we went from Wineman Communications Group to KidGlov. And I get a lot of questions about the name KidGlov, right? As a matter of fact, the same well-meaning people that love me, when I said this is going to be our new name, they were like, what are you thinking, right? People are going to think you're a daycare. They're not going to understand what's wrong with our family name. And what I can tell you, the difference and the importance of your brand is organizations that have strong brands command a higher price, they thwart off competitive threats, and they set the stage for a stronger internal culture because people know what they're getting when they come into the organization. So when I was Wineman Communications Group, nobody ever stopped me to have a conversation about what is this all about that you're doing, because they thought that they knew. Now that I'm KidGlov, people all the time will be like, why KidGlov? And whenever I'm asked that, it is an invitation for me to launch into the story. We are KidGlov because we treat people and brands with great care. It's like the story to be treated with kid gloves. And if you really want to go back and know the historic nature of kid gloves, they were gloves that were very elegant, a sign of elite status. And we want to be the kind of agency that is providing a high-end brand experience to the organizations we serve. So the name KidGlov and making that change was really important to us from the standpoint of kind of taking our services to the next level. And it was also an important way for me to signal it wasn't all about me anymore, right? It was about the team that I was putting together. And all along with KidGlov, my vision has not been to be a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 person agency that serves Lincoln. Like I want to do this thing. My dream is to have clients across the country. And so I started very early putting in a team that was probably more senior than I needed, but a team that would set me up for growth, right? And being able to rebrand helped give them a place that was outside of my shadow at that point. So we built some success in Lincoln. We had a phase where we were doing some presentations, some proposals in Omaha. It's amazing, I don't know how many of you work in Omaha and Lincoln, but that divide between Omaha and Lincoln is a chasm, right? And so in 1 week, I had 2 organizations that really would have been such a good fit for us say, we love you, we personally want to work with you, our board wants us to work with an agency from Omaha. So I'm like, all right, that's it. We need to have, if nothing else, an address in Omaha, right? So we found a client who had an extra office. We got that address in Omaha. I went to Omaha several days a week, and then we hired people in Omaha and we started to grow. Then we kind of got excited about that model of, hey, let's put offices in towns all over the Midwest, right? So we said, let's try Fort Collins. So we put a little space in Fort Collins, and we had a couple of people in Fort Collins. What we learned is we had a really great reputation in Lincoln. I'm pretty well known in Lincoln. The people I had hired were pretty well known in Lincoln. We could ride in Lincoln just on the strength of our reputation. You get a little further in Omaha, yeah, they've heard of us, but they're not sure we understand Omaha. You go to Colorado and they're like, what the hell? And every advertising agency says we're creative, we're strategic, they've all won awards, they've all got great case studies. And so we really had to figure out, how are we going to stand out? Like, what are we going to be best in the world at? And so we pulled, it can't just be being smart and nice and creative. We pulled our whole team together for a day, which once again, those of you that are founders know how expensive it is to pull a whole team together for a day. We pulled a whole team together for the day, and we had a facilitated conversation. We worked through it. And what we came to at the end of the day was, we are really great at nonprofit marketing. At that point, we were working for Tabitha, we were rebranding Matt Talbot, we were working on a lot of different nonprofits, and we said, all right, we're gonna lean into nonprofit marketing, but also being a visionary, I'm like, there's not enough business in this market for us just to be in nonprofit marketing. So what else can we build that into? So we came up with the strategy of, we want to market, the messaging started with, we want to market for change makers. We want to be the people who are helping the people who are changing the world. So what that went into is, we're going to focus on being the best at marketing for nonprofits. We understand nonprofits, we understand how they work. We're really great at helping them with fundraising. We're really great at help connecting their mission to the people they serve. We're also really good at social impact movements. So behavioral health campaigns, parenting campaigns, in the last couple of years, vaccine campaigns and healthy living campaigns have been a big part of that. So social impact marketing, which most of those organizations are nonprofits, but they have a different focus because they're funded from grants and not usually funded from donors. So we are really good at at promoting change-making messages, behavioral change messages, in a way that also helps these organizations obtain and maintain their grant funding, because that's a thing. But then we also serve purpose-driven businesses, so for-profits, and that has become a very, like in the last couple of years, purpose-driven business and cause marketing has become a very big wave. And then we handle healthcare organizations and community banks and credit unions. And the outlier there seems to be community banks and credit unions. But if you go to a rural community, a lot of times that community bank does a lot to prop up that community. And it's probably your competitor, isn't it? So I'm okay. No. All right, cool. So having that focus and really leaning into it. So we have on our team a thought leader for each of those areas of focus. We do what we call Marketing Mondays. Every other Monday we go live at noon on Facebook on a topic that relates to one of those areas. And then actually, those of you that want an easy content marketing trick, here's what we do. We go live on Facebook on Monday. We transcribe, we take that live Facebook video. By Tuesday, we have it on all of our social media. We transcribe that and clean it up and turn it into a blog post. So the following week, we're adding content to our website, and then we're promoting to that with social media. So the magic of that is from one Facebook Live, we're getting content on all of our social media in at least 3 waves, and we're adding to our website in a meaningful way that drives people in. So there's a little hack for you. We also have a landing page on our website for each of those areas, and we really lean into speaking at conferences and doing things for those areas of focus. So what that does for us is now we can go back to Colorado where they were like, yeah, you people from Nebraska, what do you know? We can now go out to Colorado and we can say, we are experts in nonprofit marketing, and we can help you raise the money, we can help you with your brand, we can help connect you with your people, and we can have a meaningful shot at winning business in other states. So we're just fingers crossed, knock on whatever this is. We're just about to sign a client in Seattle, working with a bank in New York City. So, we're excited about having the opportunity. And of course, going remote over the pandemic has really helped us out in that arena as well. Because I will tell you, when we were in Colorado, we tried Fort Collins. Fort Collins is a very big little town. We were in a nice little co-working space. We're like, all right, let's get into Loveland. And then we moved to Denver, and we were just about to take off in Denver as the pandemic started. And so at the time, I was going out there once or twice a month. It needed me, it needed networking. And so once we got into the pandemic and we're like, well, this is gonna last more than a week or two, we ended up closing down that office in Colorado. It was, if you go into other states, what you'll learn is it's very expensive. The rent lease situation is very expensive, but more so than that, the labor market, incredibly expensive. And the math doesn't work to have people who are making Colorado salaries working on Nebraska clients that expect to pay Nebraska rates. The math the other way is amazing, right? Like, we go out to Seattle and they're like, wait a minute, your rates are only that? Sign me up, right? So we're kind of tinkering with what are our out-of-state rates gonna be. Yeah, don't show this in Seattle, all right? We'll still be a great value. But that, being able to tell our story in a way that made a difference beyond our own local reputations has been important to that expansion. And that led us to how we got into this arena where we ourselves decided to become a B Corp. So we started after we decided to be the people who are helping the people who change the world, and started to talk about that message. We were introduced locally to Graham Pansing Brooks and Kyle Cartwright, who started an organization called Sea Change. And Sea Change is a conscious capitalism consulting group, and primarily one of their big services is they help people get their B Corp certification. And so we sat down with Graham and Kyle. Kyle at the time was also serving as the executive director of the Nebraska Cultural Endowment. We sat down with them mostly because I wanted to get work from the Nebraska Cultural Endowment, to be super honest. And they started telling us about this B Corp process, and it sounded really interesting. So for those of you who don't know, I think there are less than 5,000 organizations across the world that are certified B Corps. And what it does is it says that your organization has been verified as an organization that has high standards related to purpose in addition to profits. So they measure you on categories of how you treat your employees, sustainability, how you treat the community around you. They look at your governance. And essentially it's a 200 point like assessment. You have to get 80 to be certified. And so my first thought was, 80 is only 40%. I have never done less than 40% on anything in my life. This ought to be a piece of cake. But my second thought was, we're really busy and that sounds really nice, but yada, yada, whatever. Maybe someday in the future. But as we went outside of Nebraska and started telling our purpose-driven story outside of Nebraska, the B Corp situation is really popular and serious. Like in Colorado, every conversation we would have, we would go, well, we're doing this purpose-driven marketing. And they would go, oh, you must be a B Corp. So I came back and said, there must be something to this. So literally 2 minutes before the pandemic, we started down the B Corp path. And once, we paused momentarily, but once we figured out we were going to survive the pandemic, we jumped back into it. But what it did for us, I went into it looking for a kind of a marketing gimmick, right? And not really a gimmick, but once again, there's so many companies out there that say, we've got a great culture and we're giving back and so forth. I mean, this actually puts some real teeth into it. What happened was the process for me and for KidGlov, it really baked in some things into our values and our mission and our culture that were just intentions, right? And as business grows, what you find is your intention as a founder gets more and more diluted because you're not working with all the people every day. And so for me, going through the B Corp certification process really helped us define our cultural policies, our benefits policies, our sustainability policies. We were terrible on sustainability, by the way. All we could say is we recycle.
Yep.
We recycle. Worth 1 point out of 20. It's like, we got to get better than this. But so out of that process, like we have now an employee-run sustainability council, and it's not just a group that meets. Like we put some teeth behind it. We have a budget, a sustainability budget. We have people have dedicated hours to spend on it. We also have now a DE&I committee that's doing the same thing, that has a budget, that they have goals, that really it's not just something we do because it sounds nice. It's become part of the fabric of who we are. So for us, I think because we were in the pandemic, the B Corp certification actually took 18 months because they too were learning how to go remote. But what it's done for us is it has given us publicity. It has given us that seal of approval. It's made us a better organization. And even beyond that, I didn't realize it would give us access to this global club of like-minded organizations, right? So now I've been able to create a relationship with Patty Connor, who's the CEO of a coffee company called Gosa, who gives 100% of their profits to causes in the Gosa National Forest in Mozambique. What I love about Patty and the conversations I've had with her is that they don't set up their strategic plan based on sales or amount of coffee sold. They base their goals on, this is how many girls we are going to give scholarships to. This is how many trees we are going to plant in the rainforest. This is how many elephants and lions we are going to save. So if you are a coffee lover, do we have any coffee companies in here? Okay, if you're a coffee lover, Argor and Gosa, great coffee, great cause, and many others like that. So, and it's just really opened my eyes to be able to talk, just like you guys have this fraternity here of like-minded people. It's really opened my eyes to things that are going on nationally. So that B Corp certification was hard, meaningful, worth it. We only have, there's now 6 in Nebraska, which honestly is slightly embarrassing. We should have, there's 600 in Colorado, and we're at least as good as Colorado, right? So I would just say for those of you that are purpose-driven businesses, it might be something to take a look at. So now, last thing on my list is how am I transforming as a leader? I don't know if any of you are into the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs. I love all of that stuff. I'm an Enneagram 7 Wing 8, which means I am an enthusiast. I love to do new things, and I love to challenge the status quo, right? So for my wonderful team, what that looks like is Lynn reads a book and goes, oh my gosh, everybody, we need to do this, right? It's a good thing. I've had coaches all throughout my career who often are like, okay. And my team finally came up with the courage to go, Lynn, we have not finished the last thing yet. Please don't make us start a new thing, right? So I'm learning to really discipline myself to focus. I'm learning to really, now that I have 25 employees and, in the next 5 years, I want to have 100 employees, I'm realizing my role really needs to become visionary, relationship, financial leadership versus being in the work and doing the work, which is kind of hard because I love the work. I love the work of marketing and branding. And so I am working with a coach right now very much on getting myself out of the day-to-day, but being involved in a meaningful way in the right places. What I'm learning is I need to find the way. We just had a conversation with my top leaders the other day. It's like, if you all are going to go off on this journey and do this, I'm trying to identify in my mind what the sacred cows are here, right? And at the beginning of the conversation, I was like, there's only 2 sacred cows. We need to make our profit goals and we need to maintain our culture. As long as you guys don't tinker with those 2 things, I'm fine. But then we had the conversation, and by the end of the hour, we'd added 2 more, right? All right, our local reputation and our data security, those are 2 more, 2 more sacred cows. But I'm learning to figure out, how do I get far enough ahead and project a vision and parameters and goals, and then back out, but only be there at the right time. So that is my uncomfortable work for the next probably the next year. Maybe it'll take me a couple of years to get there, but that's what I'm working on. The end. No.
No. So we ask several similar questions to everybody who speaks. So what is I know during COVID you went on a book reading frenzy.
Oh God, yes.
Every time I looked on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, Lynn was reading a book.
I was.
So, what's your favorite book?
Gosh, that is a really hard one. So yes, so that wasn't even a COVID thing. A good friend of mine who is very driven said to me one day when we were having lunch, she said, you know, the best leaders in the world read 60 books a year. And I was like, really? I'm only reading like 12 books a year. What kind of slacker am I? So at the beginning of 2020, I was like, all right, I am going to read 60 books this year. Little did I know it was going to be a global pandemic, and that probably helped me get through the pandemic. I'm going to tell you though, my favorite book, my new favorite book, I just finished. I have a lot of favorite books, but my new favorite book I just finished, and it's by a guy named Michael Brody Michael Brody Waite. And I'm going to probably mess up this title, but I'll give you enough words that you can find it. It's basically great leaders run their business like addicts. And Michael Brody Waite is a recovering drug addict, which I know doesn't speak highly for his credibility, but he has started and run several businesses now using the principles he learned in recovery. And his what he teaches is radical authenticity and doing the uncomfortable work, which is why I'm using that language today. But his premise is that most people say yes to things they should say no to, right? How many of us have done that even today? Most people say yes to things they should say no to. Most people wear masks and won't admit what they don't know, right? It's like, oh yeah. When a client, in those early days, when a client asked me, can you do PR? I'd be like, of course we can do PR. Then I'd be like, hey, PR friend, can you help me with this project? And I always delivered, but sometimes, it's like, how are we gonna do this? And that made my life very stressful, to be honest. And the third thing is, most of us are unwilling to have uncomfortable conversations with those we work with, right? And that if you can overcome his premise is, if you can overcome those three things, you will save yourself 500 hours a year, because you think of all the time we spend like spinning because we don't want to admit we don't know something, or all the time we spend with workarounds because we don't want to tell that one employee that we love that just keeps doing that thing that drives us crazy, or we don't want to do the uncomfortable work. And when you think about it, 500 hours, that's an extra 2 months of work time a year. Like, if you can find an extra 2 months of work time a year, you are going to kick your competition's butt for sure. Yeah. So that is one I really like. A more obscure one, probably more for the women in the room, is called Darling, You Can't Do Both. And it was written by, I love these authors to the point where I actually have gone out and stalked them and met them and had conversations with them. Nancy, I can't think of Nancy's last name, but she was part of the creative team that came up with the Dove Real Beauty campaign that was really popular about 15 years ago. And it's her journey of what it was like to be a woman in a man's world, which things are really different now. But when I read that book in 2020, I just cried, because it's like, man, why didn't I read this book when I was 26, right? So yeah, that's really great book. KidGlov was a traction system for a while, which is EOS, Gino Wickman. That's a really good system if you want to focus on growing your business and have a pretty easy to use operating system. So that book called Traction was a pretty good one for me too. Yeah.
where's your favorite place to eat in Lincoln?
Oh, I love things that are exotic. And so right now I really dig, it was Stir. I loved Stir 22.
Yes.
And now they've closed Stir 22 and they are Stir Fast. So if you haven't tried it, amazing. But the jerk sauce is really spicy, so I will tell you that. I also love the oven. I love the oven very much. And my husband's family lived in Ethiopia for a while, and there is an Ethiopian restaurant in town. We just call it the Ethiopian restaurant. But if you want something really adventurous, that's a fun thing to do too. Yeah.
All right. I'll open it up to any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah.
So are you familiar with the site devoted.com?
No.
Okay, and it's
Yes, give her the prize. Actually, she should have the mug because she has the first prize.
Okay, all right.
Yes. And I want you to know it's a real Yeti. For everyone who says this is like a Yeti but not a Yeti, it's a real Yeti because I believe in real brands, yes.
they're an organization, and it's DVTD, that basically, how do I put it? They are a direct sale company, and all of their companies are, I want to say, it's not culture driven, but
Purpose driven?
purpose.
Yeah.
Thank you. Every one of them. So they will put out, such as, I want to say soap, and that's a soap box,
Yeah.
which for every thing that's sold, you can actually scan the back and find out where the profits or part of the profits
Yes.
is going to, like Ethiopia, building wells and stuff. One of them is Misio, which is a hair product, and part of the profits to that go to helping women escape the sex trafficking and then teaching them a skill so that they don't go back. And so every one of the companies that they represent is one of these that is a give back or is helping the candles, rescuing women. I think it is Austin.
That's cool.
Sex trafficking. And so it's a company you might check out
Yeah,
and check into.
dvtd.com. That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of great data. I actually did a live and a blog. I won't remember the statistics off of my head, but it's more than 70% of people say they want to align themselves with brands that have a positive impact. And the younger your audience, the bigger that push is. And then the number's even higher. I think it's more than 80% of people say they want to work for a company that gives back. So I'm going to tell you, I mean, in this great, workforce challenge we have right now, and I fully believe every one of my employees is being recruited by someone else all the time. And it's even gotten to the point where I believe my employees are not even being recruited locally. I think the nationals are swooping in. I've lost one person in the last year, and that person left because they're just changing careers. I'm not going to be in advertising anymore. I'm going to be in programming. And I know I'm not paying the highest. I pay fairly. I know I don't have the best benefits, but I have really good benefits for a company my size. But what I have is every one of my people know that they're coming in every day, and we're helping foster kids find families, and we are helping seniors connect with their loved ones, and we're helping kids find vaccines, and we're helping get the word out about behavioral health. And there's something really, wonderful about that.
Well, and there are some female-owned companies here in Lincoln.
Absolutely, yes.
So they are the same thing that, I think it's Brooke Mullins of Spawn, SPAPN. They sell purses.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. She's an amazing woman, but they support women, I want to say in Tibet.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong, but part of their proceeds go to support those.
Absolutely.
Women. So.
Absolutely. And you can't fake it. If you're going to do it and you're going to say you do it, you have to do it, because there's enough people with enough avenues to find you out and out you. And once you're outed, it's hard to get back. Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Jim, you had a question?
That's
Thank
right.
you, Jim. Give Jim a Changemaker journal.
Thank you. In the vetting for the B Corp,
Yeah,
one of the things that you mentioned was how you treat your employees.
yeah,
And clearly you've just talked about that they are connected with a higher purpose. And that's
Yeah.
clearly holding them there. What else, A, is part of the vetting process that they do to qualify you? So what are some of the things that they wanted to know about you? And then B, what are some of the other specific things you're doing
Yeah.
to keep your people, to keep them engaged and motivated?
yeah. Our name is KidGlov. So to be authentic to our name, we have to take care of people. And I wanted that to be a core difference for us because most agencies do have the reputation of just working their people like crazy, right? And kind of having a very kind of a negative, I don't know why I'm saying kind of. They have a negative, internally competitive environment. And so we work really hard at not having that. So our core values are courage, love, dependability, loyalty, and creativity. And so what we like to say is, we have the courage to try new things, but we also have a safe place to fail, right? I think having that safety net internally and saying we have a safe place to fail does not mean that we are by any means reckless or sloppy, but it means that sometimes on behalf of our clients, we're going to try something we've never done before because that's the right thing for them. But we're going to be authentic about it with them and let them know we're trying this for the first time. Let's go on this journey together. And if it doesn't work, we're not going to be like, you did that wrong. It's going to be like, hey, we tried it. It didn't work. How do we fix it? How do we make it right? How do we make it better? The dependability is both internally and externally. We do what we say we're going to do, right? Don't tell me something else. We do what we say we're going to do. The loyalty is we have each other's backs. I have zero tolerance for gossip and pointing fingers at people. Like I had that as a parent. I have it as a boss. We have a totally open workspace. Except for they did ask if I would go into an office because I'm very loud. But, and I know there's a lot of pros and cons about a totally open workspace. The pro is that, once again, there's no gossip in a totally open workspace because everybody's right there. What was the other? Courage, dependability, loyalty, creativity. Oh, and love. We recruit people and hire people that love what they do. I mean, marketing is a business of passion. And honestly, probably every person on my team is smart enough to go find a job in a higher paying profession. They choose to do this because they love to work in a creative field, right? And so the person that, says good enough is good enough is not going to fly at KidGlov. We talk about having fire in the belly. So that's kind of what our culture is made of. And then we also have a secondary project that we call it Creative Nirvana. I like to brand things, right? We call it Creative Nirvana because our goal is to have the best agency creative culture of any agency in the world. So we are constantly talking about and working on what is the next thing we can do to have a better culture. So we have really open conversations, and I suppose the other thing I have very little tolerance for is a victim mentality. So if somebody comes to me and says, this just always happens, it's like, what are you doing about it? Who have you talked to? What can we do? So that is a big part of our culture. On the B Corp side, gosh, I hope I can remember, but we went through a lot of questions about our policies, like what was our maternity policy, what was our paternity policy. It's like I never even thought about having a paternity policy, right? But I want to support my people. It analyzed our entire payroll and what percentage of our employees were above a living wage, which is 100%. One of the things we track based on being a B Corp is, while most agencies have people work 50 to 60 or more hours a week, we actually track and measure and share with our entire staff what percentage of our team works more than 45 hours a week? Because our goal is to have you do your work, have you do it efficiently, effectively, have some fun while you're doing it, and then go home to your families or your hobbies or your pets or whatever it is that you want to go home to. So that is a number that we track. So it was a lot of that. It was, it really helped us round out some of our hiring policies on DE&I. You all know that we don't live in a very diverse community, right? And so before going through the B Corp process, it was easy to say, well, I want to do better, but I don't really have much opportunity to. And I really was faced with the hard challenge of, if I want to do better, I need to figure out how to do better. So, one of the things we used to always require when we opened a job is we required advertising agency experience. So if I'm saying I don't have an opportunity to recruit diverse candidates, there aren't diverse candidates in the advertising agencies in the state of Nebraska, but yet I'm requiring that all of my new employees have advertising agency experience. Well, duh, that math is not going to work, right? So for a lot of our positions, we've now removed that requirement, and we have, I'm deep breath there, right? We have, there was a time when I hired people and I needed them to hit the ground running and start making money right away. And I don't have a really long runway for that, but I have a longer runway. So, we're really working into being able to hire people who haven't had direct advertising experience, but that are smart and passionate and creative and want to do the work, giving them a little more runway to bring them in. So that was important to us.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So have you read John G. Miller's QBQ, Question Behind the Question? It's all about
The question
accountability.
behind the question. All right.
Yeah, it's a great book because it's like, it falls back on me, my action, I can't blame someone else. And it's an amazing book for every business to read. So
That's a great one.
QBQ, Question Behind the Question, and it's John G. as in George Miller.
Yeah.
So great book.
That's good. I would have to say, under the book category, the other one that I love is Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last. And my favorite part in it is there's this chart where he talks about he talks about the chemical balance of the brain and the work culture, right? And how you need to think about how your work culture is promoting endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine, which sounds a little bit devious, but it's really a cool book. Balancing the cultural safety and the challenge and the opportunity it's a good one. So QBQ, I got it on the list.
Well, and Simon Sinek's The Infinite Game.
The Infinite Game is a good one too.
I need to read that one.
Yeah.
It basically talks about when you're in business, you have this goal and that's it. Well, if you're going with the infinite, that means you continue to keep getting better. There is no end. It's just continuing. And
It's a good one.
yeah.
It's a good one. All right.
Well, we're coming up on the end of our time. Thank you, Lynn, so much for sharing your
Absolutely.
story and for all the insights that you provided to us today. It was so good to see you, and give Lynn a round of applause.
Yeah, thanks. I am on LinkedIn, so if you seek me out on LinkedIn, connect with me. Don't try to sell me something in the very first message. But if you have questions or I can ever be of service, let me know.
And thank you, everybody, for coming.